Our first guest wrote Snow Crash, where the words metaverse and avatar first appeared in 1992. Now, the manuscript of the landmark science fiction novel is being auctioned off by Sotheby's. Joining us now is Snow Crash author Neal Stephenson and Sotheby's head of sales, Cassandra Hatton. Welcome, Neal and Cassandra, to the show this morning. So, Neal, let's start off with you. You said in the news release that your head was full of computer graphics, lore, and visions of a satirical cyberpunk future when you wrote the book 30 years ago. Now, looking at the developments in the metaverse now, have things turned out the way you expected?
I think the big difference between what I was imagining then and what really happened was the advent of the game industry. Doom, the first kind of 3D immersive game, came out the year after Snow Crash was published. And that plus the World Wide Web created a huge demand for computers that could do graphics. And that's really what has led the way in the last couple decades towards the realization of an actual metaverse.
So what's your outlook on mass adoption of virtual experiences?
I think it's already happened in the form of games. I think 30 years ago, we tended focus more on goggles because they look cool. If you're writing a cool, hip cyberpunk novel, you know, you want everyone wearing cool looking goggles. And that's fine. I like goggles, but the reality is that we've got billions of people all over the world now accessing three-dimensional virtual environments through flat screens just by holding up a telephone or sitting in front of a laptop or a game console. So I think that's how it's going to, has already broken into the mass market, and that the sort of goggle-based VR or AR experiences might follow along.
So when you came up with these ideas, what was the process? What led you to sort of think of this kind of future, or a version of the future that we're seeing now? And where is it taking you going forward? I mean, are you still kind of like thinking of the world in that way? And you know, what data bits are you taking in from you know, chats and outside world discussions on, I don't know, Reddit and the like, and just seeing where technology is leading to kind of project 30 years forward?
I'm kind of a low frequency guy. You know, trying to keep track of chats and various message boards just makes me tired. You know, because I'm a grumpy old man. So I tend to focus more on long-term trends and low frequency sources of information. So, you know, I guess my main connection these days to what's happening in this world is again through just the video game industry and seeing what's happening there.
Mm-hmm. Let's bring Cassandra to the conversation here. So Sotheby's has been, you know, a prominent book auction house since its establishment. And Cassandra, you have a lot of experience with rare books. So what's unique about the manuscript of Snow Crash here, and what's at auction here?
Yes, it's true. I started out as a books and manuscripts person, and books were the first things that Sotheby's ever sold. We sell a lot of other things now: dinosaurs, arts, cars, watches, etc. What's unique about this is that we actually have two manuscripts. We have the original manuscript that Neal wrote in his home, the rawest form of the book that he typed up, that he wrote his notations on. And then we have the typesetting manuscript, which contains all of his additional edits, all of the edits from the editors, and that is the final version before publication. Rarely do we get to see the development of such an influential book at this level, to see what originally came from the author's mind, to see the process it goes through to become the book that we all know today, is really it's an interesting thing. And what I love about this auction, which consists of 6 lots relating to the book, is that it's it's a transitional thing. We're looking at items that were created in an analog world, predicting the future of the digital world, and when Neal mentioned Doom earlier, that really took me back, because I remember playing that game. This was around the time when I first read Snow Crash, and now we're fast forward, and everything Neal wrote about has come true. It's really eerie to be part of a generation of people who remembers the before and the after time, right? But this auction has, if you had pulled up the screen there, there's a sword is lot 1. If you've ever heard of Weta, and if you haven't, I guarantee you've seen their work. They create the swords, weapons, props, set design for all of your favorite films. And they have created this amazing Tachi. This is a sword that is inspired by the backstory of the book. Anybody who's read Snow Crash knows that the main character, hero protagonist, uses a katana, a Japanese sword, in the metaverse. So Weta has created a physical, absolutely gorgeous Tachi, another type of sword, but they've also created an incredibly high resolution 3D replica of this sword, which is offered alongside it as an NFT. So it's really true to this whole physical digital concept that we're presenting in the sale. It's incredible. It comes in this box with secret panels. There are Easter eggs that come along with it. So it's a beautiful thing. We also have the original painting used for the cover art of the 1993 mass market paperback edition of the book. Many people may not be aware that Snow Crash was originally conceived as a graphic novel. So this is like, it's such an amazing thing. And the only thing that survives from this graphic novel are 10 35 millimeter slides. Neal can probably tell us more about the background of the development of this, but we have also digitized those slides and minted those files as an NFT. So this is another physical digital lot that is in the auction. And running alongside the auction, we have a sale of generative digital art inspired by Snow Crash and in commemoration of the 30th anniversary. So those are all offered at a fixed price. It's $250 each for these NFTs, and they're so cool. Neal, maybe you want to tell us a little more about the development of the graphic novel, but that's basically what we're selling.
Are you getting actual physical manuscripts? You take them home, or is it a digital copy of the manuscripts? I mean,
you get the physical manuscript.
Oh wow, Neal, you're okay with that?
Yes.
I hand delivered them to Cassandra at Sotheby's last year. So yeah, I'm okay with it. They've been sitting in my storage locker for 30 years, unopened, unlooked at. And it just, when we were starting to talk about a 30th anniversary auction last year, I was like, oh my God, I hope I haven't lost them, So I made a panicky run down to the storage locker, and, I'm going through all of this.
So you're not too sentimental on it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get too sentimental on
Next
it.
to
In
the
other
bike
words,
equipment and so on.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it's not collecting.
I hear you, but yeah, exactly. I mean, if it's been sitting next to the exercycle for 30 years gathering dust, then I can't really claim a lot of sentimental attachment to it. And if somebody, a collector or a library or someone, is excited about it, then why not put it out there and make it available?
Well, I see that it's going up. The current bid is $35,000 US for the manuscript. So if someone thinks your storage junk there is worth a pretty penny.
Yeah, what else do you have there?
There, Neal.
Yeah, maybe I should get out the exercycle.
Yeah, old bills, things like that. That could go for a few hundred at least.
You mentioned the development of a graphic novel, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think something we need to remember is that all of this crypto, NFT, none of this, like this, he's the OG. Like, he's the person who came up with the term metaverse, came up with the idea of Avatar, the far-reaching impact that this book has had. I mean, Jim Cameron makes the film Avatar after he reads snow crash. You look at all of these tech companies, all of these finance companies, there are many people who have required their interns, their new recruits to read Snow Crash. Anybody who's in this field should have read this book by now. If they haven't, they better go out and buy a copy and understand where this industry comes from. So it's really consequential work.
Your thoughts on, what has captured everyone's imagination right now is artificial intelligence, especially the hype around ChatGPT, and it's seemed to draw in some attention, at least away from the metaverse, with Microsoft announcing the extension of their OpenAI partnership in late January. I wonder what are some of your thoughts on artificial intelligence, and should there be boundaries set on technology?
Big topic. I think it depends on how it's used. Mostly what we've tended to see is its use in creative applications, where I don't think it's at all interesting. I think that when you're experiencing a work of art, looking at a picture or reading a book, what you're doing is having a kind of communion with the artist who made thousands of little micro decisions in the course of creating that work of art or writing that book. And if it's just something generated by an algorithm, that it's simply not interesting.
You don't think an artificial intelligence could have written Snow Crash?
Well, maybe one did, but no, I would say even if that were the case, then when you read the book, then all you're doing is reading the output of an algorithm. And is that interesting to you? Then if it is, then fine. But personally, I know a lot of writers, who are putting a lot of effort into creating their own original works, and I'd rather support them and hear what they have to say than just look at the output of an algorithm.
Cassandra mentioned
art is about communing and sharing emotion and human experience. It's not about beauty and perfection. So AI could create something perfect, but it can't translate the human experience from one to another. At least not yet. I don't think that's, this is why you have paintings that may not be perfect. Picasso's works don't perfectly depict their subjects, but they're worth far more than somebody who draws a perfectly technical piece. So it's not about...
Cassandra mentioned how your work has become required reading in a lot of places, and she mentioned James Cameron making a couple of Avatar films, making a couple of $1 billion there. But as an artist, when you see your work, take on a life of its own, which all art does. Once it's created, you sort of lose the control of it once it's out in the world. What do you feel about that, and how your work is interpreted, and what has come of it?
I'm trying to continue my career as a creative writer. And so if I spend all my time like reading reviews and paying attention to what people are saying and how people are reading my stuff, I'll never write another book. So I do try to be somewhat isolated from that. But in the wake of the kind of the year of the metaverse, which was 2022 for me, I have co-founded a startup in the blockchain space, Lamina One, with the intention of trying to build some of the infrastructure that would be needed to support an open metaverse and to provide tools and infrastructure that content creators could benefit from in trying to build that out. So that's kind of my main connection back right now to the world of metaverse builders, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you want to move on. So what is in your head right now? Are you having any visions of what could happen in the next 30 years?
Last year, I published a book called Termination Shock, which is about climate change geoengineering. So that was a more future-facing book. My next book is probably going to be more of a historical novel about the history of science, so less forward-facing. But in terms of what's happening next, I think the main thing I'm interested right now is carbon and what it's going to take to remove a lot of carbon from the atmosphere. I think that all of this other stuff is pretty unimportant compared to that. And so that's if right now, I think if you're a technically savvy person, particularly if you're a young person trying to think about what's going to be interesting in coming decades, the answer is carbon.
All right. We'll leave it there. Neal, Cassandra, thank you so much for joining us. That was Snow Crash author Neal Stephenson, who may or may not be an artificial intelligence, and Sotheby's head of sale, Cassandra Hatton.